5:37 p.m. Black Sea region. The operational picture appears stable. NATO surveillance assets continue routine monitoring across maritime and air corridors. Naval patrols follow pre-established routes. Radar traffic shows no abnormal congestion. On the surface, this is another controlled evening in a region accustomed to tension. Then, at exactly 5:37 p.m., the pattern breaks. Multiple radar systems register simultaneous activity originating from separate launch zones. The signals are not random. They form a coordinated geometry, spreading across multiple vectors and altitudes. This is not an isolated launch. It is not a warning shot. It is structured. Within seconds, classification protocols escalate automatically. Observation turns into threat assessment. The language inside command centers changes immediately. This is no longer a diplomatic signal. It is a kinetic event entering operational space. The Black Sea, already one of the most strategically dense regions in the world, compresses further into a narrow decision window. Every second now matters. Initial trajectory analysis confirms that the targets are not symbolic. The vectors are aligned with NATO-linked operational nodes, maritime corridors, and monitoring infrastructure. The intent is not mass destruction. The intent is disruption. Screens fill with overlapping data streams. Operators do not react emotionally. They follow procedure. This moment has been trained for, simulated, and anticipated for years. The difference is that now it is happening in real time. The first internal countdown begins the moment the attack is confirmed. Command authorization chains tighten. Redundant communication lines open automatically. No public alarms are issued. No announcements are made. Everything unfolds behind closed systems, governed by pre-approved thresholds. What matters now is not who fired first. What matters is how fast the system adapts. As the clock moves forward, the situation shifts from uncertainty to inevitability. Defensive postures transition quietly. Surveillance assets realign. The region's strategic balance begins to tilt, not because of explosions, but because of timing. At 5:37 p.m., the attack enters history as a timestamp. What follows will not be measured in hours or days, but in minutes. And the next 28 minutes will decide how far this confrontation is allowed to go. The Russian decision does not emerge in isolation. It is the outcome of sustained pressure, long-term signaling, and repeated tests along NATO's eastern perimeter. For weeks, movements in the Black Sea region had followed a familiar pattern: presence, counter-presence, surveillance, response. Each side observed, measured, and recalibrated. The assumption was that escalation remained manageable as long as action stayed below a certain threshold. The operation launched at 5:37 p.m. was designed around that assumption. The objective was not total confrontation. It was leverage. A controlled strike intended to force recalculation without triggering an immediate collective response. The belief was that NATO would slow the process, convene consultations, and delay decisive action. That belief proved to be the central misread. The error was not in underestimating defensive capabilities. It was in misunderstanding how modern response frameworks operate under compressed timelines. The decision-makers assumed human deliberation would dominate the first phase. In reality, much of the response logic had already been delegated. The geometry of the attack mattered more than its scale. Multiple vectors, synchronized timing, and target alignment indicated saturation intent rather than symbolic pressure. That single factor reclassified the event across multiple systems simultaneously. Once that reclassification occurred, the situation crossed an invisible boundary. From that point forward, response pathways no longer depended on debate or interpretation. They followed predefined criteria built to function precisely when political hesitation could become a liability. Inside command structures, the language shifted again. The event was no longer treated as a regional provocation. It was treated as an operational challenge requiring containment before repetition became possible. There was no opportunity for reversal, no pause for messaging. The decision window closed the moment the attack pattern was confirmed. What had been intended as a calculated signal became a trigger, not because of intent, but because of structure. Systems designed to prevent escalation activated to prevent something worse. By the time the miscalculation became apparent, the sequence was already in motion. Each layer of response depended on the previous one, locking the process forward. In modern conflict, the most dangerous moment is not the launch. It is the moment when assumptions meet automation. And in those minutes following 5:37 p.m., that meeting changed everything. The first critical minute begins the moment the attack is fully classified. Across multiple command centers, automated defense layers shift posture almost simultaneously. This is not reaction in the traditional sense. It is execution of logic already embedded long before the first missile entered the airspace. Minute 5. Defensive systems activate in overlapping tiers. Some intercepts succeed immediately. Others are delayed by vector complexity. The airspace becomes dense, not with chaos, but with calculation. Every trajectory is tracked, prioritized, and evaluated in real time. Minute 9. Naval assets adjust formation. Surveillance platforms expand coverage. The objective is no longer limited to interception. It is situational dominance. Preventing blind spots becomes as critical as stopping incoming threats. Minute 13. Secondary indicators begin to emerge. Not explosions, not visible destruction. Subtle signals. Delays in data relay. Intermittent loss of synchronization across specific operational nodes. These are early warnings that the engagement is spreading beyond the initial exchange. Minute 17. Command redundancy protocols activate. When primary channels experience degradation, secondary and tertiary systems take over automatically. This transition is smooth, but it confirms that the engagement has crossed from isolated incident into systemic stress. Minute 21. The strategic assessment changes again. Analysts no longer ask whether the attack will be contained. They ask whether it can be repeated. That single question alters priorities across the entire response architecture. Minute 24. Multiple operational nodes across the Black Sea region stop transmitting consistent data. There is no visual confirmation, no public acknowledgement. The absence itself becomes the signal. Minute 28. Several critical systems fail to re-establish full functionality. Whatever actions are occurring now are no longer defensive by nature. They are preventative, designed to halt momentum rather than respond to it. This is the true turning point. Not because of what is seen, but because of what disappears. Connectivity, coordination, predictability. In modern warfare, visibility is power. When systems go dark, the balance shifts instantly. By the time the clock passes the 28-minute mark, the sequence is locked. No single actor can reverse it without escalating further. The window for restraint has narrowed to near zero. The critical minutes do not end with a conclusion. They end with a new reality. One where the Black Sea remains physically unchanged, yet strategically altered, and where the next decision carries far greater weight than the first. The response does not begin with movement. It begins with alignment. Once the critical threshold is crossed, the priority shifts from reacting to controlling the sequence. The objective is no longer to counter what has already happened, but to prevent what could happen next. This distinction defines modern response doctrine. There is no rush toward visible force, no mass deployment designed for public signaling. Instead, decision layers tighten, systems synchronize. The response unfolds across domains that rarely appear on screen. The first phase focuses on isolation. Operational networks linked to the initial engagement experience targeted disruption. Not total collapse, but controlled fragmentation. Command continuity weakens without triggering alarms that would force immediate counteraction. The second phase follows almost invisibly. Functional capabilities degrade without physical destruction. Infrastructure remains standing. Assets remain in place, but coordination becomes unreliable. Timing slips. Redundancy compensates, until it does not. This is not escalation by firepower. It is escalation by denial. The response is deliberately bounded. Maritime corridors remain open. Civilian traffic continues. The region is not sealed off. Instead, it is reshaped into a space where initiative is constrained by uncertainty. Every action is measured against a single objective: stop momentum without inviting expansion. Inside command structures, the emphasis remains on speed and containment. Each response element is designed to conclude its task quickly, leaving minimal signature and no clear invitation for retaliation. The absence of spectacle is intentional. In earlier eras, response required visibility to establish credibility. In the current one, credibility is established through precision and restraint, through the demonstration that control can be asserted without chaos. As the response phase concludes, no declaration follows. No public acknowledgement confirms what has been done. The silence itself becomes part of the message. The sequence ends not with a climax, but with stabilization. The region remains tense, but operationally quieter. The immediate threat window closes. What remains is assessment, on both sides, of how close the system came to tipping beyond control. This is the nature of modern deterrence. Not an exchange of force meant to dominate headlines, but a calibrated interruption designed to end a trajectory before it hardens into conflict. The response does not seek victory. It seeks containment. And in the space between action and acknowledgement, that objective is achieved. What unfolded in those 28 minutes did not resemble traditional warfare. There were no front lines, no territorial advances, no public declarations of victory or defeat. Yet the strategic landscape of the Black Sea was altered. This episode illustrates how modern conflict is no longer defined by visible destruction, but by control over systems, timing, and escalation thresholds. Power is exercised not through overwhelming force, but through the ability to interrupt, disable, and stabilize before chaos spreads. The most significant outcome was not what was destroyed, but what was prevented. Shipping lanes remained open. Civilian infrastructure continued to function. Markets did not collapse. The region avoided a cascade of reactions that, in earlier eras, would have been almost unavoidable. This is deterrence in its contemporary form. Rather than punishing an adversary publicly, it imposes constraints quietly. It reshapes the decision space, forcing reassessment without forcing retaliation. The message is delivered not through statements, but through altered capabilities and lost momentum. For NATO, the sequence demonstrated the effectiveness of integrated response architectures designed to operate under extreme time compression. For Russia, it exposed how quickly calculated pressure can collide with automated containment frameworks once certain structural lines are crossed. For the rest of the world, the lesson is broader. In modern geopolitics, the most dangerous moments are brief. They unfold faster than public awareness. By the time headlines catch up, the decisive phase has often already passed. The Black Sea did not literally turn red, but it became a symbol of how close complex systems can come to failure, and how narrowly that failure can be avoided through restraint, preparation, and control. Understanding these dynamics matters, not to predict war, but to recognize how it is increasingly managed, limited, and redirected before it expands. If you want more timeline-based reconstructions, strategic simulations, and clear explanations of modern military decision-making, make sure to subscribe to the channel. New analyses are released regularly, and if this video helped clarify how contemporary deterrence actually works, leave a like. It directly supports the continuation of this kind of in-depth, non-sensational content. The next crisis will not announce itself loudly. It will unfold quietly, minute by minute.